rook can move both horizontally and vertically from its direction, 1 to unlimited spaces across the board. It cannot move diagonal, just vertical or horizontal. The knight moves in an L shape all across in every direction. So it can go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, right 2, down 1, or left 2 and down 1. Also, the knight is the only character that can jump over other pieces on the board. Bishops, similarly to the rook, can move both back and forth diagonally to 1 to unlimited spaces. It has to stay on the color that it starts on. It can go back as well. This here is your queen. The queen is essentially your most valuable player. It can move just like the bishop or the rook from its position on the board. It can go both forward and backwards diagonally. It can also go left, right, up, and down from its direction. However, it cannot jump over pieces as the knight would be able to. The king is the piece that you want to try to protect the whole game. We'll explain that later. But the king, similarly to the queen, can move in any direction on the board. However, it can only go one piece or one place at a time. So left, right, up, down, and all diagonals. But only one space at a time. And these guys are your pawns. Essentially, that's all they are. They're pieces that can initially, they're kind of tricky. Initially, on their first move from this starting line, they can go up 2 places. From there on out, they can only move 1 place at a time. Also, with pawns, they can only attack diagonally. So if they're going to take another piece from one of these other places, they can only attack diagonally. They cannot attack forward. We're going to demonstrate a few moves here. We have both of the boards set up. We'll just kind of talk about how one character can capture another character. So like any board game, one character cannot occupy the same space as another. So as mentioned before, in this situation, the pawn can attack diagonally. So if it's the white's move, it can go diagonally and capture this piece, and vice versa. Also, with the knight here, remember it can move in an L, and it can take this bishop, so it can go 1, 2, and then up, and it captures that bishop right there. The queen is also right here. Remember, it can move anywhere on the board, so we're going to move it down over here to capture this other queen. But as your strategy gets better, you'll realize that's not a great move, because the king here can then move sideways and capture that queen. One other move that's kind of tricky that we haven't discussed is called castling. With the king here and the rook here, they can do what's called a castling maneuver. There's a few caveats to that. Neither piece could be moved before. They both have to be in their original positions. So say you move the king up and then back down, or you move the rook over and then back. You won't be able to do this. But this is a one-time move where you castle it, so you're essentially swapping the positions over. So your king comes over 2 positions and your rook comes over 2 positions. It's really good defensive maneuver. You can also do it on the opposite side of the board with this other rook. So now we know how to set up the board. We know the arrangement of the characters and how they move on the board, and how one character can capture an opposite character or another character. So now we're going to talk about the whole strategy and the whole point behind the game of chess. So as I mentioned before, the king, that's kind of the guy we're after. We want to capture the opposite king. So say I'm going to bring this queen back over here. So we call this a check. When a queen or any character is in the position to capture the king, that's called a check. Because we have to make a defensive move against this, because if the king gets captured, then you lose the game. So in this situation, you can do several things. You can move your king out of what's called the line of check, or you can use another player to block that line of direct attack, because the queen can move diagonally, it can capture that king. So the king can move up here and then he's out of check, or you can use the pawn here. You can move that up one and that blocks the direct line, or you can even use your knight. You can use your knight to jump over those pieces to land on this place, and that also blocks the line of check. Once you've developed strategies, you've developed like a sense of how to play the game, what you really want to do is what's called a checkmate. So that's when your king has no options. Say I have the queen here and there's no opportunities for him to be blocked, and say I have my rook here, and maybe we'll put the knight right here. This is kind of far-fetched, but say it's arranged like this. So as you can see, the king is threatened in every position that he can move to. In his current position, he's threatened by both the rook, because that can move vertically or horizontally, by the queen, because that can go diagonally, and if he moves here, he's still going to be in check. And if he goes here, he's actually still going to be in check from the knight, because the knight can move in that L shape. And if he moves here, he's still going to be in check from the queen. So that is a checkmate. So in this situation, the game would be over. Another side note here, back before when we talked about castling your king, another caveat I didn't mention earlier is that you cannot castle out of check. So if this is the case, say I'm threatening the king with my queen, this player cannot castle out of check. Another move would have to be made in order to prevent that check. Checkmate.